Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
Back in 2008, I suffered a breakdown. Burnout is the modern term nowadays. But I made some bad decisions under pressure and I was bottling it and think it's going to go away, but it doesn't. It comes back, it festers, and it came back and bit me in the ass big time.
For a lot of people, I get a sense the real value now is not for the £1 million house and the sports car. It's more about a sense of contentment, a sense of happiness, that sense that life is working for them, that they're engaging with the world around them, and it's responding in a positive way.
Because it's not worse thinking, well, this is the norm, I've got to get on with it. Because that's what old school was. Be a man, get on with it. But now I think people can take time out and think about it, and there's a lot more on offer.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick Coyle. I do hope you're well. Have you tried fire spinning yet? After last week's podcast, we were talking about that. Sounded very exciting, didn't it? Very dangerous, but I'm sure there are all the various different measures are in place to make sure it's absolutely super safe. And also an opportunity to give a flame-free version of it a go if you're in the Liverpool City region as well. All the details for that are in the Facebook group. There is also details at the bottom of the podcast as well, where you can link up with the team from the Flow Project. It was a really interesting conversation. We've got another interesting conversation on the way today. And this conversation is about sort of keeping on top of your everyday mental health, particularly if you've been through a particularly tough time. Maybe you've been through counselling, or you're on medication, or you're on medication for a short period of time. What happens beyond that point? What happens at the end of a medication run, maybe? What happens at the end of a counselling service? And how do you make sure that there is ongoing help and support out there for you? Now, our guest is a guy called Stephen Robinson. He's actually from my hometown in Chorley, it just so happens. And his platform, It's mental.co.uk, offers a service which basically allows people to check in on a regular basis, and that can be daily, in regard to their mental health, to keep on top of things, to focus the mind on mental health, and to focus the mind on yourself at a time where you might be busy with lots of things, or you might be, well, you know what lives are like these days with everything that's going on. So I thought it was an interesting conversation to have, not least because Stephen's conversation itself is really, really fascinating in terms of his own mental health journey, his own personal experiences, but also a couple of close suicides to him and his family, which really sort of focused his mind on this as an issue and using the skills that he had to offer this new service. Now, there's a signpost to the service as part of the conversation, but I'll mention it again. It's mental.co.uk. There is a free version of that service. There's also a premium offer for it as well. Head to the website to find out some more about the work that they do, but also just listen to the conversation, because I think, again, it's about normalising the conversation, and it's also about normalising a focus on mental health in our day-to-day lives. I started off by asking Stephen about his own mental health journey and those incidents that I mentioned, those experiences that he had, which put him on this new path.
It's going back to 2016. We suddenly lost my brother-in-law to suicide, which was total shock to the family. And it was life and soul of the party. He wasn't one of these that kept himself in a corner or a bit of a recluse or anything like that. And it just had a massive impact, because obviously, like an heart attack and things like that, once they're there and suddenly they're not. But I think with suicide, all them questions come out. You want answers. And I think that's a frustrating time for anybody to go through who's lost a loved one through suicide. To, constantly be questioning yourself. I mean, that has a strain on your mental health, within itself. So that went on for, obviously, and it still goes on today. They still, I could go to a walk around where I live, and you do, them questions just come back to you. Do you know about why they didn't leave a note or anything like that? Was there any reason? And we thought there might be a financial cloud coming over us or something like that, but there was nothing. So it just puts down to he was not so well, and he was hiding it and suffering in silence, as most people do with mental health.
So many times when we talk about suicide and the impact of a suicide on those close family, it comes with those questions, those unanswered questions, which don't ever necessarily get an answer. So I think that's a huge part, isn't it, in terms of that conversation that we have around suicide. Of course, we have to focus on the victim, the person who dies, absolutely. But at the same time, to have so many sort of other questions being answered, it's no wonder that you hear about suicide and negative mental health almost passing on to close friends and family, because maybe some of those troubles that person was going through sort of then turn into something else that the close family members then have to find themselves dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of anger. You go through so many emotions when you're the one that's left behind, if that makes sense, and that's not to say in a negative way, but that's sometimes how you feel. If there's something like a financial strain or something that's been left behind as a negative legacy, that's hard to come to terms with, because that selfishness always crops up, but people do not understand the pain and suffering that these people go through, and we won't. I mean, that's the taboo, really, in a lot of cases. I think really it's just that you can take over your life. It can consume your life trying to find the answers, and you've got to, and it's not easy, but you suddenly, with friends, family around you, got to move on from that, because it can take you down with it. And like you say, them negative mental health thought patterns, and also, the thought of suicide starts coming to mind at the forefront of your mind, and that's the worst thing that can happen.
In terms of that, we'll come to speak about sort of where you're at in terms of your mental health journey, the mental health training that you've undertaken and your understanding of it now. Where were you then in terms of knowing about the mental health conversation, understanding why somebody might die by suicide?
I mean, before this happened to us as a family, I was very passive. It was quite old school approach to it, really. Because you don't know what you don't know, if that makes sense. But the impact this can have on people, and the amount of people that are out there suffering from this it's a epidemic. There's so many people talk about what the root cause could be and why this is coming at us on like a tsunami. This was happening before COVID, but COVID has added to that. But I think people are more aware, and there's more education about, which is good. And people can pigeonhole how they're feeling a bit more, which I think is really important. Because it's not worse thinking, well, this is the norm, I've got to get on with it. Because that's what old school was. It was, be a man, get on with it. But now I think people can take time out and think about it, and there's a lot more on offer. But I didn't know anything. Naive, that's what I call it. Naive. And I think there's so much more now out, even since 2016. I think the other side to it, though, is 2018, I lost my brother to suicide. April 27th it was. Remember the day quite well. But he was a functioning alcoholic. That's a different way of coping with it, because we're trying to get him to get some support and help. So we had different frustrations. We had frustrations of the system. Like obviously we wanted to section him, but you can't just section somebody until they try and harm themselves, or they abuse somebody, a partner of a member of family, or they try and chuck themselves downstairs. And that is frustrating in itself to hear them words. Does that make sense? From someone like a GP or someone from the NHS, which is a professional, a clinical advisory. And you go, where do we go from here? Because then you feel like your back's to the wall. Well, he has to do something for us to get him help. And that just doesn't seem logical to me. It never has.
Those two events in that really short space of time, although the circumstances in both cases were very different, I kind of get a sense that maybe set your mind to start thinking about things a little bit differently, and to maybe apply what you'd gone through and what your family had gone through, a close family had gone through, to something that was a little bit different. And I guess in terms of that, just explain a little bit about what you were doing before, because it's essentially completely different to what you're doing now. But we all try and turn our skill sets, don't we, from what we know into what we want to do.
I've always been in tech, an entrepreneur in tech. So I run a digital marketing agency for 13 years as a CEO, and then CEO of a cybersecurity company out of Lancaster University. But there's a lot of synergies to what I was doing there, to what I'm doing now, and I put into this business now of It's Mental. But I did have my own personal experience as well, which, back in 2008, I suffered a breakdown. Burnout is the modern term nowadays. But I made some bad decisions under pressure, and I was bottling it, and as anybody does, they chuck themselves into work and think it's going to go away, but it doesn't. It comes back, it festers, and it came back and bit me in the ass big time. So I went personally, I had them feelings then not as an outsider, as a family member. I had personal feelings where I was overwhelmed with racing mind, anxiety, where going to a board meeting, the commute seemed massive. Could I get through the day and all that? And I went for counselling. I was in a lucky position to pay privately, so I wasn't waiting. And I went every week for 5 months. But people, you only usually get 6 to 8 weeks. And I think there is where you get over that milestone, that first big step of talking about this openly. You don't want to stop talking about it because you feel that's helping you. And not everybody wants to listen. But what was the scary part for me is when this therapy stopped and they said, well, Mr. Robinson, I think, we've done all we can at this point, which was brilliant. The counselling was brilliant. You just end up on your own. You feel like you're on your own. And I just thought there's this massive void that people are just going into and expect to just continue normally for everyday life. And I think, well, you're not going to give me something like any tools or any exercises? No, it was, all right, we had exercises within it. And I thought, and I weren't on any medication. I'm glad I didn't. But a lot of people are given that option and take it up. And that is a problem in itself because, people do need it, don't get me wrong, of imbalances and things like that. But the length of reviews on medication is a big problem. People are on things for years and they just are so petrified of going back to that feeling and thought process that they had. So they're never going to come off. And I just sat back and I felt this day that we're just in a vicious cycle. People are just going round in circles where life's going to always chuck adversity at us. When we get older, there's going to be a bereavement. There's going to be health problems. We're going to lose a relationship. If we have children are going to have problems growing up, if it's socially, if it's educational, etc. And it's how we deal with that. So they jump back to the start where, they're feeling bad again, and they need counselling, or they go to get a review from the GP again, and they're not progressing, and they're stuck. And I just see these thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people just stuck in that vicious circle. And I thought, how do we break this circle? And we have to give them the tools, confidence, and an education to start to manage it themselves. And that's where It's Mental was born. So I took a lot of skills, and how do we do that? So the mission was, I want to make an impact. As you said and started this conversation, you said, it takes adversity to make people change path, change direction. And it's same for me. And I said, so the mission became 1 million people. We want to teach 1 million people how to self-manage their mental well-being.
So it's interesting that as an idea that it's not just about the equivalent of the cast has come off so you can go and play football again. It's the cast has come off so you can go and play football again. Here are some strengthening, core muscle exercises that you got to do every single day to make sure that next time you end up in a situation where your leg's going to break, your muscles are a little bit stronger and you survive. And it's interesting, and we always kind of draw those silly comparisons, don't we, between the mental health world and the physical health world. But actually that idea of ongoing support, which I guess when we look at the wider picture, with that comes costs, doesn't it? Cost to NHS services, cost to time as well that people have got. When we've got waiting lists, and if your counselling service never ends, then we need a lot more counsellors that maybe aren't necessarily there. But you obviously saw that as an opportunity to say, well, what might that be? Give us a sense then of what that offer is, if you like, in terms of that ongoing support, that it becomes a daily or weekly, whatever, check-in on your mental health, as opposed to the crisis lurch. Crisis.
I think the thing is it's engagement is really important with this. So early engagement, early intervention. And the thing is with that is, how can we do that? So technology comes in, that is the bridge. And with all the stigma that's going about with making that first step, is it the big call to the Samaritans? Is it talking to your GP? Is it even walking into the A&E? Them steps are too big for most people. So engaging with something online that you can get information, advice with instant access 24/7 at a free or minimal cost makes a lot of sense. And your mind can only take so much information, especially when you're struggling with anxiety or depression. So it's bite-sized chunks. And I was very fortunate. Again, I do think pieces of jigsaws have come together for me, because we created, in cybersecurity, it's a totally different sector, but we learned actionable learning online. So we were mitigating internal risk of cyber threats. So we were teaching employees about policy and about breaches, which is quite complex, but you have to do it in bite-sized chunks. So that same process, learning process, we involved embedded into this platform, this self-care platform. And then people will engage in different ways, so they can do it themselves in their own time, on demand, with videos and exercises, or they can go into group coaching sessions with an expert or a coach, and then what comes out of that is like a peer-to-peer support group, which is really important as well, or they can go to one-to-one coaching. But coaching is so important, because anyone who is successful, be it sport, be it business, be it political, they have a team around them nowadays, mainly for accountability and discipline. And that's what prolongs things and keeps things as a constant in your life. And now it's making that affordable, so we built that in. And that is where we feel we've got a good chance of changing people's lives, and it's working. It's definitely working. And, we've had some cases of people coming off medication. That's not for us to make that decision. We don't advise that. That's to keep communication back and forth with the GP. But if we can give them that confidence that they feel that they could have wings again, does that make sense? The mental wings and stability. I feel we've done our job, or doing our job.
Practically then, tell us what would that interface be? What would that be on say a daily basis? What would they see?
Well, there's two ways of engagement. One's we're very proactive. So our strategy is aligned with the NHS and the government, which is prevention is better than cure. So and after post-COVID, the awareness of well-being, physical and mental, has ballooned. So that's obviously helped. But we will sell proactive videos every day to people for 2 minutes. We send mood boosts of 60 seconds sporadically, which is a mood boost, which would calm you down if you're stressed or elevate your mood if you're low. And that happens every day to most people. In certain parts of the day, probably at a working environment, probably in the afternoon, where you start procrastinating, your mind is times that. So we'll send them out at them times a day. The 3 minute videos is more about mental hygiene, is more about daily routine, little habits, tips, etc. And just can hopefully give you a different perspective on the day. We build that, and then obviously we go into 8 to 12 minutes where they log into the system, and that's self-help sessions. So that's what we think is our holy grail, because that is a coach through a video giving you one exercise to do there and then. And what the thing is to find out about yourself, to find out, like in CBT cases, which is, what are the thought patterns, what are the trigger points, and then adapt and create coping mechanisms. But you're building a toolkit about yourself over a period of time. Does that make sense? And you can rate the exercises that you're doing. So you might stop after 3 months because you feel okay, but life might chuck adversity at you, or something happens and you go, rather than go to the GP, or rather than go to the counselling or the company to put you forward to healthcare provision, you can get instant access to its mental platform and see the exercise that you've already done and do them again and try and build you back into that place again of where you were more stronger, more resilient, and can function again, and even aspire to some dreams within 90 days and beyond of what you want to achieve in life.
So when people start then operating in that, rather than the short-term fix of finding the way out of a problem, they start to thinking about the medium to the long term. What sort of things do they say to you anecdotally about sort of the difference that has made when they're sort of like 2-3 months into sort of that daily sort of check-in? What is that feedback like?
It's all sorts. I mean, it's all different, really. It could be instant occasions. We've had people say that me and my wife were talking about a certain subject which we're really struggling with, and this video came and it really resonated with us, and it just changed and put us in a positive mindset. Mindset's really important, and to have a positive mindset, and that's what we're trying to create. So that's a lot of the feedback that we get from the videos. Over a period of time, I think people moving forward in the steps that we do, it's visualising, a lot of visualisation that they can see and start to feel themselves in more of a positive light. So the analogy I give you in motivation, we call it motive in coaching. You've got to have a motive to motivate. So, and the ladies might not like this, but I'm going to mention it because it's the one that everybody knows, is when a lady knows there's a wedding day. She has dreamt about getting married. She can close her eyes and feel and see what she's wearing. She can smell the surroundings, see the people around her, and getting that good feeling. Does that make sense? Now that is what gives you motive. So from motive gives you motivation. And that is why women, if they've got a target weight to lose, they will do it. Most women, there's high percentages, stats out there that they'll do it. So that mentally is what we have to stem into through coaching the individual that we're working with. But we do it no bigger than 90 days. And then we have another vision and another vision. But if we have to link motive to it, let me ask you about that, because I've had that conversation before on the podcast, actually talking about that I'm always a little bit sniffy or suspicious of like a coach who will go, you want to make £1 million, I'll tell you how to make $1 million, like that and then they basically go, come on, just work harder, like have a better ride. And it's not anything, it's just someone going, well, come on then, make the £1 million, come on, it's up to you, got to do it yourself. Whereas actually those people who are a little bit more nuanced understand it a little bit differently around, right, if you want to make £1 million, well, is it through work? Is that what qualifications do you need to get the job? Which training providers do you need to work with? Which part of the country do you need to be working to maximise your salary? You actually break it down into those individual pieces. And I think the other thing is that so much of that world is based around success and money, whereas actually for a lot of people, I get a sense the real value now is not for the £1 million house and the sports car. It's more about a sense of contentment, a sense of happiness, that sense that life is working for them, that they're engaging with the world around them, and it's responding in a positive way. And I think those little steps, I think those are the sorts of little steps that we've forgotten how
to take. You know, when we laugh about the fact we don't know our next door neighbour's name, well, maybe that's the reason why you don't feel connected to your community. You know, those small stuff. Go and find out what your next door neighbour is called. Ask them if they, want a cake you've just baked. Bake a cake for the first time and take it around. Suddenly you've got a little thing which has just expanded your horizon just a little bit further.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the main thing about it, obviously, we don't go for materialistic things. Mainly, it's more of a mental health. It's a balance. It's a feeling of physically being well, or because you've been through so much, maybe trauma. It's how you can feel, and I don't like the word normal because it's such a thing, but you feel good within yourself. And whatever that is to that person, are you making small steps to get there? Because it's not going to come to you. You've got to make small steps, and a coach can help you do that. But it's that guidance and accountability, and accountability equals discipline. And that's what, as human beings, we're really lacking. Else we'd all be physically fit, we'd all be mentally strong, and all have a fantastic work-life balance. And we don't. We're all over the place.
And how much of that is based down to then the original reason you set up It's Mental? This idea that it's got to be an ongoing process, that it isn't a achieve your goal, stop, wait for things to get bad, then start all over again. That it's about every day, once a week, every couple of whatever's right for you, checking in with yourself and your feelings, maybe having a session, whatever it would be, that then works for you. Because it's striking me that this is more and more important as an issue, that it's not mental health crisis, then I'm fine, but then something else might come. You've got to have that toolkit ready to go at any point, and the best way of maintaining your toolkit is to check it regularly.
Yes,
and to make sure all the pieces are still there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody mentions in coaching and especially mental well-being, and there's probably millions of journals out there, but getting it down on paper is really important to just get it out of your head in one way, but also see the patterns. So like we've had so many things with our journals that's part of the toolkit, that you would document things, your mood in the morning, just a quick little tick. Are your mood high, happy, or are you down low? And over a period of time, same at the evening, and a reason why, but over a period of time, you will see patterns. Does that make sense? And some, for instance, it's dead simple to change things in your routine. So someone can say, I wake up low because I'm dreading that commute, etc. It puts me on for a bad day, I'm not productive, blah, 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 and it just escalates. And they come back and they say, but I feel better when I've took the dog a walk. And you go, well, why do you not change the dog walk to the morning? Would that put you in a better situation? Because we're not changing much there. And do you have 20 minutes that you can get up early? Yes, I can. Just simple things like that will put him into a more positive mood. The people they engage with that day, is that they're more patient, and all these kind of things are made out to be a better day for them. And at the end of the day, when they sit down to have a meal, etc., they can reflect on that day and say, yeah, it was good. And that's simple techniques that people can do themselves. You don't need a coach for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because that's a really simple thing, looking at the routine, what are the things I need to achieve during the day and what's the best order for doing them. But to put your mental health at the centre of it strikes me as a really sort of straightforward thing that most people could do. How do you sort of make sure that you're, from a mental health point of view, doing the right things, so that if, a clinician did come on board or someone from the medical world came on board, what sort of checks and balances do you have to make sure that you're ticking the right boxes?
We've got a really strict onboarding process for coaches and experts. So we work with all different experts. We have also got an advisory board of 5 that advise constantly on the direction, the services, etc. So we go through them processes all the time. We have focus groups. We use a lot of focus groups in different sectors, by profession or by certain services. But also we based the whole model on a model called PERMA, which is positive psychology. So this is came out from Penn's University in America, and you'll see nowadays in the UK a lot of bachelor's degrees, master's degrees on positive psychology. This is part of the curriculum in Australia now and some of South America. So moving people forward and getting them into a positive state of mind, that's where we come from. So we embed and train all our coaches in that model. Does that make sense? So we've added vitality into PERMA as well, so we call it plus V because we think vitality is really important as physical education, energy management, sleep and nutrition. So we add them. So if you do the subcategories, we have 24 different subheaders. We have 24 experts, panel experts that go through rigorous testing to get to that point to give us advice and come up with different toolkits or programs like group coaching programs, or they offer the one-to-one, and it's not like anybody can just go and give this advice. They have to have their qualifications and be vetted.
Absolutely, and that's such an important thing as well. So in terms of It's Mental and the format, there may be people who've gone through counselling and are thinking, I need something that keeps me topped up. Do you deal with people on a one-to-one basis? I know you do a lot of stuff in terms of sort of like a business community, speaking with companies and organisations. So how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, end of the day, it's individuals, it's people that we're dealing with. So, yes, individuals just can come on and join and sign up, and it's free. We do have a premium side to it because we have to sustain the model. But they can engage in one-to-one coaching if they want to, or they can do group coaching sessions, just like the workplace wellbeing. The workplace wellbeing is more of a cultural thing, but also it's going through the employees that they want to change the culture and have something in place which is preventative. There's so many problems coming out in the workplace now, which absenteeism was always one of the KPIs we looked at. Presenteeism is the biggest problem now. So people are coming out, they get into work, but they can't function. And we talk to companies every day, and they will have a group of people that they will say, wrongly or rightly, what do we do with these people? Because they're on medication, or they're not on medication, but they've been for counselling, through healthcare provision, through the company or private, but they're still not moving forward, or they're not performing. And that is a bad situation, not for the individual and for obviously the company that's employing them. So something's got to break at some point. So I think them are the ideal people we feel we can take and move them forward, and try and move them forward in small bite-sized chunks to get them back where they can perform at work and there's not a risk of them losing their job.
And can I just do, before we go, when do people tell you about where they do these sessions? Do people do them like while walking the dog? Do people like specifically sit down like in front of like a computer screen and do it? Do people, I don't know if people have told you they've done a session while they're skydiving or something like that?
Majority is done, I would say, in the evening on the self-help sessions, but the videos, we have one of the fastest growing sectors for us is construction. And really, construction companies have found it hard to manage mental well-being because they don't have everyone in one place. So, and you don't want to affect productivity by shipping people out of an head office. So you've got probably 80%, maybe more, of your staff, or your employees out on sites, but they can access this wherever they are in the breaks. Does that make sense? Travelling in the van to work and back. So that's the beauty of it, really. So yeah, it's all different times, different situations for people, but we like that quiet time where people can concentrate on themselves and just give themselves a bit more time, really, nowadays in this fast moving world, that you can obviously just understand more about yourself. Definitely.
And in terms of that, if we just bring it full circle, given your experiences in both 2016 and then 2018 and your own personal burnout breakdown situation that you described as well, now knowing what you know and the work that you've done and the sessions that you've overseen as well, can you better contextualize that now? Can you see that slightly differently? Can you understand maybe a little bit more about those individual situations and how it escalated to create that storm around you for that 2-3 year period?
Yeah, good question. I mean, are you saying from a personal point of view or a generalising?
No, from a personal point of view, when you now think about what's happened to you and how it happened and to the people around you, do you get a sense of understanding now around maybe what those circumstances were that those people were experiencing, and maybe how, not that you did something wrong, but maybe how you would maybe think about it a little bit differently if it happened again?
Yeah, I think the main probably frustration for me personally is being passive towards these people that are struggling, because people will generally say I'm struggling, and we are passive to that kind of terminology where we shouldn't be. That's a cry for help, and people are going to say it so many times. And I think I'm constantly now probably on the forefront of listening to people's conversation and listening to words people use on a regular basis. Does that make sense? Because people say sometimes what they think. So if they are, don't get me wrong, this has been going on for years, if someone's pessimistic and or realistic or optimist, and it is coming like that. But I think with your friends and family, you've got to pick up and act upon it. You've got to say something to these people to stop it escalating, because that is the problem. We all have mental health. It's how we deal with it. The fact is, we're not dealing with it. That's why people are getting to the point where the bucket's overflowing, they're overwhelmed, and that's having a physical effect on their health as well as mentally. So it's all about, to me, is early engagement, early intervention. Like you said, things like mental hygiene, them are the things that we should do. I'd love to be in a situation, a workplace environment, that we've all had these conversations that you go, are you doing, Mick? And you go, yeah, I just had a bad week last week. I was just off with a cold, for a couple of days. Nobody thinks twice, bats an eyelid. It'd be great for someone to say, the same question, and you reply, yeah, I was really low. I had a really bad day, and I really found it hard to function. I had to go home early, but I'm all right now. I'm all right, I'm back. And that should be the norm. Does that make sense? It should be classed.
Yeah, it does, because when people do it, they go, oh yeah, because I took a couple of Lemsip and I had a couple of good nights sleep, and then and then you think, oh, what do you do? I had Vicks Vapor Rub and all that. Other brands are available, I'm sure. But actually, if you go, actually, I took the dog out for a big long walk, or I just went for a walk up. You'll know Winter Hill. Went out for a big walk up Winter Hill. That thing that, just to blow the cobwebs away. And then that becomes part of the norm as well. Oh, I felt like that, but I didn't do anything. So next time I'm going to give that thing a try, in the same way, that normalization. I think we're some way away from that, but I do spot little chinks of light when I sometimes hear those conversations now. And I think, great, that's that little section there. That's two people there having a conversation, and they'll be all right. If they can maintain that, then that's great. And when I hear from younger people in particular, much more open to talking about their mental health, my real aspiration for them is to grow up into a workplace and grow up into further education, whatever it would be, and find that form of conversation is still welcomed. That they don't then get bogged down into falling into the traps that maybe our generation fell into or were forced into. I think that's one of the things that's crucial as well. But that idea of mental hygiene, the toolkit, and having the skill set there, then yeah, absolutely, I think it's going to be a really important thing. Let's hope It's Mental can play a huge part in that as well, Stephen, in the future as well. itsmental.co.uk is the website, itsmental.co.uk. I'll put the link at the bottom of the podcast where you can find more information about Stephen, the work that he does, and of course the service on offer. Thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us on Mental Health Monday.
Thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999.